Welcome to Digitally Creative. I'm your host, Vincent Ferrari, and joining me this week, primarily because you guys asked, but not because I don't love him very much, my good friend, the one and only Jon Reddick from GenXGrownup. What's going on, buddy? How you doing?
Hey, Vincent. Thank you, first of all, for inviting me back. Secondly, as I was telling you before we started recording, I haven't seen the receipts that there are people asking to have me back, but I am flattered if true. So
Well,
we'll say that.
I know for a fact you picked up one of my listeners as a patron.
Yes, I did.
You
Yeah.
did.
Very
So
happy.
they found you on this podcast and they're a patron. So technically, that's a
Okay.
Patreon donation from me every month. So congratulations.
Now
You
I
got a
have the
little more out of
receipt.
me.
Fair enough. You got it. Okay. No, it's
But-
great to be back. Thanks.
Oh, it's so. I mean, I was telling Jon before we got started. I was a little worried about having him on because it's a little outside of what I typically talk about. He's primarily a content creator and mostly talks about things that there are passing interest for some people and deep interest like me in the retro stuff. But man, after you were on last time, I swear to you, it just was like, you got to have him on again. He was so fun. It was such a fun conversation. And I'm like, all right, I'll have him on again. And I was like, you know what? Just throw it at the wall and see if he wants to come on this week. So there we are.
Well, I certainly had a good time. I mean, ever since we met, it's been a great relationship. You've swung by live edits on Twitch that I do for my podcast periodically. You'll pop in there, and there's something really cool about this fiber, this network of creators that will often get together and we support one another, and it's someone you can bounce ideas off of, and it's just moral support sometimes. So when you ping me, I'm like, no brainer. I know you're a class act and you run a great show, and there's no way I was going to say no. So I appreciate it.
One of the things I love about popping in on Tuesday for your Twitch streams is watching you edit a show and seeing kind of that, I don't know how to describe it, but just kind of that feeling of, oh yeah, I'm not the only one that edits a show. I'm not the only one who just has to drag through this every week, and I readily admit, I don't have the hand that you do on this show. I kind of just wing it and let it go. But there are times, I don't spend a lot of time on direct edits like you do. I spend a lot of time on, making sure that it looks different, making sure the video quality of the guest looks good, because a lot of times they're washed out, they're pixelated, the contrast is off, like that kind of stuff. And then audio levels, trying to make sure that there's always going to be a variation between me and my guests, but I always try to make sure that it's as close as I can conceivably make it without it sounding ridiculous. And all those little technical details. And I sit there and I slog through that every single week. When that part of it is done, and then I use my magic little program to cut up the camera cuts now to go from camera 1 to camera 2, I'm like, okay, the hard part of the edit is done. The rest of it is just smooth sailing all the way to the finish line. But man,
what I hear you saying is misery loves company. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, it really does. It really does.
Well, see, I have a different problem. Problem is the wrong word, but so we don't typically have guests. So we have the three of us on the show, and we all have the same mic sitting in the same place on the same table with the same levels. So I'm not tweaking for, quality, because, the guys are great and the mics are great and the hardware is great and the software is great. What I find myself editing for, and every time I say it, it sounds filthy, but I'm going to say it again, is I try to create listener lubricant. So
do tell.
I want to reduce friction for the listener, right? So that's what lubricant is, right? So I try to walk this fine line for my ear that is, it sounds organic. I'm not taking out every little or every little stutter, but I'm taking out ones that draw attention to themselves, so that as a listener, I'm not pulled out of it, so that someone might go, well, why didn't they edit that out? If you ever think to me, why didn't they edit that out? I didn't do it right.
Right.
The parts that are left in, if someone stammers, I try to take that out and fix it for them. If they're stammering while they're trying to find an idea, that's a very different thing. So it's not AI edits, right? It's not take out every instance of it's not that. Is this contributing to the thought, or is this
just a random crutch in the middle of it,
punctuation while I'm figuring out the next word to say, So that's really all I'm doing. And the other thing really is, if all three of us talk at the same time, I try to gap it out so everyone is heard. because you have more than 2 people stepping on each other, you're gonna miss something,
It's
or
hard
all of it.
enough. It was always hard when I had a co-host for this show. When
Mhm.
I had a co-host, and then we'd have a guest, and sometimes, we'd have married couples as a guest. So it'd be me, my co-host, and then 2 other guests on top of it. And it's like 4
Oh,
people
okay.
doing a podcast. It's like
That's a lot. Yeah.
that's a lot of people, even if
Yeah.
you're all very well behaved. But the problem is then you get to the point where you're all so well behaved that every conversation is punctuated by 20 seconds of silence while people are trying to make sure that it's okay
Waiting on
for
the
them to
next thing.
talk.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah. The toughest one I ever had, we did an episode once where we had 6 people on,
oy.
which was the 3 of us, and we each brought on a guest, and we were debating the pros and cons of horror movies and what makes a
Mhm.
good horror movie. And like I brought on my daughter, and I think Mo brought on his daughter, and I can remember George. Did he bring on his son or no? He brought on Marcus, I think, one of our longtime patrons. He brought anyway. We each brought someone to the table to defend our views, kind of thing. But luckily, it wasn't 6 hosts. It was 3 hosts and 3 guests who were kind of
Right.
who were longtime listeners and they knew better. But as you said, that balance, even once if everybody's behaved, it's still you're wrangling 6 cats and make sure
Mhm.
everyone gets their point across. And yeah, that's one of those things that I think you can teach, but you can't teach overnight.
Sure.
You have to either have an ear for it, or it takes reps. You're not going to go to the gym and be swole overnight. You're going to go to the gym every Tuesday for a month, and then for a year, and then for 3 years, and then finally you're going to look different. I think
Right.
editing podcasting is like that, and editing video is like that to some degree too. Which is there's a like a vocabulary of video and a
Yes.
vocabulary of
Yes.
audio that that leads your eye or leads your ear into the next thing. And it's not as simple as give me a checklist for it. It's something you kind of have to do for a while, I
It's
think,
a
or
feel.
you're a prodigy, one of those. But
Yeah.
it's not difficult. It's just a million tiny details, really, is all of
You know where I've learned, and this is kind of a bit of a confession to the people that don't know me really well.
it. Ooh, all
But
right.
do you know where I've seen it's more of a feel thing than a technical teach you how to do
Mm,
it thing? Karaoke.
okay.
Karaoke is really hard. It's
Hmm.
really hard. I don't care how well you know the songs.
Okay.
It's really hard, but I really love doing it. It's become my new favorite thing. Like, I absolutely love doing karaoke. There's a bar in Queens that I go to with Kathy every couple of weeks we go.
Nice.
Have a night out with a bunch of friends, and they have karaoke on Saturday nights. Hey, the first night I went there, I was like, "You know what? This is my opportunity to try it. It's a bunch of people I know. I mean, how bad could it be?" And I had a
Sure.
great time, but I wasn't that good at it. And
What's your
now
go-to
it's
song?
what's that?
What's your go-to song?
I haven't done a repeat yet. I'm very
Oh
proud of
no.
that. I
Oh,
have not
you're
done a
running through the
repeat.
book, huh?
Yep.
Okay.
I actually did, I did 2 this past weekend, and I did, so there's one singer who is actually one of my fiance's close friends, and she's like the best female singer in the bar, like, no doubt about it.
Okay.
People don't
Yeah.
wanna go up after her, that's how good she is.
Right.
Well, her and
Yeah.
I did Paradise by the Dashboard Light together,
Okay.
and
Nice.
we absolutely brought the house down. It was a hoot. We had an amazing time, and I was like, I would not have anywhere near had the confidence to go up there with her, a
Mhm.
couple of months ago, or
Right.
B, like, done this song at all. Like, it's a hard song. It's a long song. There's a lot going on.
Right.
But, it was all a matter of feel. Like, there were parts where I wasn't even looking at the screen. Like, I kind of knew the timing. I knew when she finished her part, I knew when to come in. I didn't need to look at the screen to know, oh, it's my turn. Oh, it's my turn. You just kind of know, and you have a feel for you kind of get absorbed into it. It's great. But yes, karaoke, a lot like video editing. There's the takeaway.
I think in a couple of ways, right? Because both of them are at a glance, you think it's no big deal.
Hmm.
Anybody can do it.
Hmm.
But then when you dig into it, you find out, well, you can do it, but can you do it well? I
Can you
think
do it
that's what it is.
well?
Both of them probably follow that, right?
And
Look,
that's
anybody can splice video and audio together. Can you make it listenable or watchable, right?
100%. And that was so when I went up the first time, it was like, all right, if I'm going to do this, I'm not going to half-ass this. Like, I'm going to do
Mhm.
this. So I'm like emoting and pointing and like closing my eyes and shit. I'm doing the
Heck
whole
yeah.
performance. Like I'm not just standing there, arms at my side, mic in my hand, scared looking at because there are people,
Right.
believe me,
Vincent the
there are
Mouse, squeak, squeak, squeak. No,
exactly,
no.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
There are people that do that, and I don't judge them for it. I'm more impressed that because there are people who will not go up there and do it. Period. Like they're just like,
Sure.
nope, wouldn't do it. Will not ever be doing that. Sorry, you guys can do it and entertain the rest of the bar, and that's perfectly fine. But
Yep.
it's a good way because it's also gotten me out of my shell, and I've met some people at the bar who now are like, hey, actually, one of them came up to me Saturday. He's like, hey, you haven't gone yet. Are you singing tonight or what? I'm like, yeah, I'm good. I'm good. I already
You
have
become a
one, and I'm gonna do
regular.
another one. Yeah. But that's it's funny because there's that community thing again, right? Because all the people that
Hmm.
sing
Yeah.
regularly, you
Right.
kind of you see each other, and it's like, oh yeah, what are you doing tonight? Oh, I'm gonna do John Mellencamp. Hurts so good, and the one guy was like, wait, how's that one go again? And I started singing it, and in the back of the bar, the two of us are doing a duet of this song before either one of us went up to say, and it's like, damn it, how did I bond over this? Of all the things I've done in my life, like this is the thing I'm finding kinship with other people over. But
Makes sense. Music is a powerful catalyst for, I mean, it jumps right to a certain core emotion sometimes, especially when you're looking at like nostalgic things you grew up with.
oh yeah.
Then, like scents and music and stuff like that, it like bypasses, goes straight to your monkey brain and goes,
Mhm,
remember
mhm.
this? And pokes your pleasure center and you like it, feel good, you like it. And that's what those songs do.
You really do remember, they say scent is your strongest, trigger of
Yeah.
memory, like it is.
Right.
That's
Hmm.
scientifically proven, but I personally think that as far as the things that you actually process consciously, I think music is, because I
Yeah.
can tell you, like, a lot of times the last time I heard a song, the first time I heard a song, where I was the first time I heard it, where I was the last time I was singing it in the car, like, it's
Yeah.
just like you connect to it every time you hear it. I think everyone connects to music on a different level, but everybody connects to music. So,
Yeah. Yeah. And I have that same kind of feeling with like old Atari video games. I have a similar
yes.
experience. It's not now they notoriously did not have music most of the time, but they had sounds and they had
Mhm.
that special sound chip, right? And so most games kind of sounded samey. So there are games I don't go back to a lot, like the like Air Sea Battle that came with my Sears
Oof.
telegames, right?
Oof.
But when I plug it in, and when I push start and I shoot the first thing, it goes, "Pew!" I'm like, oh my God. Oh my God, I'm 10, right?
Yep.
It snaps me back to sitting cross-legged in front of the wood grain console TV, because it like scent does, it's a kind of music. Even if some
Yes.
people would go, what's that noise? Well, that cacophony is the sound of my childhood and I love it. So
Yep.
it's music,
So
frankly.
many it's amazing how iconic some of those Atari 2600 games soundtracks, and I use that term
Hmm.
super
Yeah,
loosely, but
very
how
much.
how
Yeah.
how iconic some of those soundtracks are, because like games like, Yar's Revenge, that droning
Oh.
hum in the background, and yeah,
Yep.
it's it, and the sound of the
Yeah.
spiral spinning up, and it's like,
Yep.
it, like, I get goosebumps when I think about those sounds, or like the guy ping-ponging around the balloons at the top of the screen on Circus Atari,
Oh, heck
like
yeah. Right. You
like
finally break through and they get up high and you got your pedal trying to, do I need to flip it? Which way is it? Oh man, I hate that game, but love that game.
I that's exactly me. I hate that game and I love it at the same time, but
Yep.
yeah, those games, all they stick with you. I think on all I have, the RG, I wanna say it's the 352, the Ambernick one, and that's where I keep
Oh yeah.
most of my ROMs, and,
Sure. That's the little
um
handheld, yeah?
yes, yes, it's the one that's
Yes.
shaped and colored like an SNES controller. Um,
Okay,
I
sure. Yep.
I love it. I think it's the greatest thing ever, and the games I play the most on it are Atari 2600 games. In fact, in preparation for speaking to you today, I actually played Vanguard this morning, and you know how much I hate that game, and I
I know you
played
don't care for
Vanguard.
Vanguard. You know that it has a soft spot in my heart,
Mhm.
especially that 2600 version.
But it's funny because when I hit the E, again, the iconic soundtrack, right? You hit the E, go do do
Bum,
do
ba-da,
do do
ba-da-da-da,
do.
ba-da-da-da, ba-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. That's like somebody screaming right now at their podcast. That is some like regular like symphonic music. That's an orchestral piece. I don't know what
Oh
it is.
yeah.
March of the something. I don't know what it's called. Is it a
It's probably
Valkyrie? I
it
don't know what it's
probably is
called.
some kind of march. It's probably a combination of it's something Wagner
Yeah,
did, and we're not allowed to talk about
yeah.
Wagner anymore.
Somebody took it because it was royalty free, so I can use this song, right? So they plug it in, and now it becomes, I don't know who wrote it. Sorry, Bach. Sorry, whoever you are. It's a Vanguard song now, as far as I'm concerned.
What I so this weekend as I was doing stuff around the house. I was listening to you guys in your return episode, and
Oh, thank you.
you threw a teaser up at the end for what you guys are doing this coming week. And
Oh, yeah.
I meant to watch the edit yesterday, and I was really, really busy. I didn't get a chance to, but I am so excited. So as we're recording this, it is August 16th. The
Yep,
episode that we're speaking about drops on August 17th. And
that's right.
that episode is going to be, you are doing a backtrack about Purple Rain.
That's right.
My
That's
God, man.
exactly right.
Of all the albums to do, you picked like literally the greatest, possibly the greatest movie soundtrack in history.
Well, I'll tell you, here's the thing, and it's more than just a movie soundtrack. That's one
Mhm.
of the many things that it is.
Mhm.
Yeah, you're right. First, I said before last time I was here, I'm so impressed that you actually pay attention enough to know, like, what's dropping on what day. There can't be that many of our fans that they're just, let's see what's next. But thank you for that. But yeah, so you can imagine picking backtrack topics. I remember when we started the podcast
Mhm.
7 years ago or something, and I had a friend go, "Well, you're going to run out of topics pretty soon." And I'm like, "Oh no," because we did VHS and we
Mhm.
did, you did cassettes and and then we found out there's so much you could do. And then you could start digging into individual things. Like I know at one point we did fads of the 80s. And then we realized, no, 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 no. You got to break that up. So,
Mhm.
like, we're planning an episode in a few weeks that's 80s fashion trends, like just that little niche of fads. You could break things down so far.
Rainbow tracksuits, here we come.
Yeah, right. Yep. The side ponytail and the torn knee jeans,
Oh,
whatever things there
awesome.
are, right?
Awesome.
So, but when looking for topics, one thing we found, we had done musical backtracks. We had done ones where we said, oh, the Billboard hits of 82 or whatever, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
But we had not said, oh, pick an album just as a cohesive piece of work. And the first one we did last year, no, it was early this year. Anyway, we did Synchronicity by the Police.
Which was an awesome episode.
Really enjoyed doing that. We got so much positive response. And not long after we did it, one of our huge fans said, let me tell you, August is this anniversary of around the creation of Purple Rain. Like August 3rd is when this live performance and people heard these songs for the first time. In fact, 3 songs on the album are from that first live performance, August 3rd in 83, I think,
Oh, wow.
which is now
Okay.
exactly 40 years ago. And he was like, if you will please do Purple Rain sometime in August of this year, I will help you do the research. So he's like a co-researcher and producer on this. And we're like,
Oh,
yeah, do the
awesome.
work for us. I mean, you could bribe us with effort. Sure, absolutely you can. And spoiler alert, it's just a big love fest of, even songs that aren't our favorite songs are still
Mhm.
great songs on this album. Like
Oh,
there
yeah.
aren't any like, oh, skip this one. There's none of those on this thing. Yeah.
So I was listening to a friend of mine used to do a podcast that was all lists. That was every week they
Yep.
would do a different list. Him and his co-hosts. And one week they were doing the greatest soundtracks of. I think they did the greatest soundtracks of the '80s, and there were
Mm-hmm.
a lot of what you would expect on there. There was your Dirty Dancing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still upset that Cocktail didn't make his list, but whatever, because I think Cocktail is one of the best soundtracks of
Huh.
the '80s. But
All right.
fine, whatever, you didn't put it on there. And they got to number one, they said Purple Rain. And I
Yeah.
always knew Purple Rain as an album. I had
Yeah.
no idea that it was a soundtrack. And it was such a mind blower for me. And it made me
Mm-hmm.
look at that album in a whole different light. Like, imagine, like, that never happens. Like, to have a soundtrack that people don't even know. I mean, obviously, some people knew. It's not like a secret. They weren't
Mm-hmm.
hiding it
Right.
from anybody.
Of course.
But it was something that I just never knew. I just knew it as an amazing album. So,
Well, and you're not wrong. It's like one of the trivia items we cover in this show is Prince had at one point there in when Purple Rain came out in 83, whenever it was, he had the number one album, the number one soundtrack, and the number one single simultaneously.
Jesus.
And that's only ever been accomplished by 2 other artists. It's the Beatles, and forgive me for not remembering the second one, but it's great company. to
That's
have all of
incredible.
that together. And for him, they were all off one album. It was all off of one thing. And only 3 people have ever done that. And I learned stuff about him that I didn't know. I mean, the first segment we talk about the man and his history
Mhm.
before we jump into the album. And yeah, I won't spoil it, or it's really interesting, more interesting than I thought it would be. But
Sure.
yeah,
It's
I know
wild.
we'll do more of these.
It's wild because people know him as a singer and a performer, and they don't even realize how many songs he wrote for other people.
You're
Obviously,
right. Everything. Yeah.
Sinead O'Connor
Yep.
just died recently, but "Nothing
Hmm.
Compares to You" was written by
That was
him
Chris.
for her. Like,
Hmm.
that was he wanted her to sing that song. That was his goal, was for her to sing that song. It's like, damn. And, Kathy and I were talking about this because we drove we went to Baltimore 2 weeks ago? Yeah, 2 weeks ago now, jeez.
Hmm.
And we were in the car for a while. So we were talking about all kinds of stuff. When we were talking about music, it's like we were talking about how many people were known as singers, but then really, and performers were really like songwriters for a lot of other people. Lionel
Yeah.
Richie was a super prolific songwriter, and I had no idea until I got older. It's like, oh yeah, he wrote that for this person, and he wrote that. Obviously everyone knows the Diane Warrens and the Jim Steinman, who was connected to
Hmm.
Meatloaf until Meatloaf stopped performing. He basically wrote just about every Meatloaf song that was ever performed. But man, you start seeing all these famous people that are performing on their own and how many songs they wrote for other people. It's like, wow,
Hmm.
this is
Right.
like, these guys are way more talented than just good performers that can
Well,
stand on a
yeah,
stage.
that shows you how good they are. It's like, not only do they have a creative spigot putting out enough content for themselves, but
Hmm.
it's more than they could possibly consume, right? And so they're bottling it and giving it to other people, because they have so much creativity.
Do you have any albums like, I mean, Purple Rain, as much as I think it's a great album, it didn't really connect for me as a kid, but then as an adult, it's like, yeah, this is
Mhm.
amazing. Like, do you have any albums like that where you discovered them as an adult, even though you knew about them kind of when you were younger, and went, wow, I
Hmm.
really didn't give this the credit it was deserved at the time?
Hmm. That's a really good question. I mean, there are certainly there are groups that I have followed, as a kid that I followed. I have my favorite bands. And I remember as a kid, it's like when you find your first love and you're like,
Hmm.
"Oh, what is this new emotion that I've never felt before?" Right? And then when you lose it, it crushes you, but you want it again, right?
Hmm.
And I know when I found like my band that I loved, I remember going, "Oh, this is what music can be." And then
Yeah.
and the nice thing about that is you don't have to break up with that band to go find another one, right? I'm like, I gotta seek out the another great band that I'm going to love.
Sure.
And I listened, and I never found anything that clicked for me quite as much as that one band. So maybe that was my soulmate band, maybe that's
Hmm.
it. But there's certainly been artists that have come along as of late that I would not expect to like,
Hmm.
you know, like the Justin Timberlakes of the world,
Uh-huh.
like the Katy Perrys of the world. It's so easy to dismiss them as pop music and bubblegum music,
Sure.
but there's a musicality and there's something in those songs that they're not for me. They're not for a 50-year-old dude,
Right,
right?
right, right, right.
They're at the club and they're hooking up and their stuff and I'm doing laundry, right? That's not really a song for me. But there's something in just in the we talked about how much music connects on a primal level. Just hearing those songs, it almost let me live vicariously through them and through their it's like feeling young again, right? I didn't have
Right.
that same experience growing up, but I have found that I think a lot of people our age will go, "Oh, it's kids music." That's not even music, that kind of opinion. And I'm all over the dial. I'll be listening to, let's listen to current pop stuff and let's switch over to listen to Weird Al Yankovic. And then let's listen to some country music and let's switch over and listen to some hip hop. I'm all over the dial, which is great now that you can do that on YouTube Music or Spotify or whatever.
Absolutely.
But yeah, there's not just one. I think everybody that I could have found that I loved when I was a kid, I found. It's really
Hmm.
finding those new artists that surprise me. When I give them a list and I'm like, okay, there's something there for me.
Yeah, no, that's I think that's just as important. I think one of the things, they say that your music taste kind of stop growing when you're 25. You basically hit
Mm,
25, and the music you like when you're 25 becomes the music you like for the rest of your life. And there is something to that, because if I think about what I listen to now, it's like, yeah, even if it's different artists, that style is still, it still
yeah,
rears its
yeah.
head the most. But I always find
I
that
think
is
we have a tendency to lock ourselves in that bubble though, because yes, we love that music, but
Mhm.
that need not be the only music that you love. You can find current stuff too.
Mhm.
It's not forsaking, right? You're not forsaking the Beatles to go and listen to Lil Nas, right? It's okay. You're allowed to. You can always come back to the Beatles. It's not
They'll always be
required that
there.
you give up one. That's right. They're going to be there. Yeah, you never know what you might like.
You know what's actually exposed me to a lot of the stuff that I had forgotten about? Spotify just
Mm,
released a new feature and they kind of soft launched it. So they didn't really announce it. They just released it. And it's called DJ. That's all it's called.
okay.
It's on your homepage. It's got a blue icon with the word beta on the top of it because it's not officially released yet. It's
Okay.
something that they're trialing. And when you start it up, you get an AI voice that introduces himself as Xavier, but you can call him X, and he
Cool.
talks to you, explains how it works.
Oh, wow. So there's an
A
AI voice. Is it in
Oh,
between
yeah.
songs then?
Oh,
Oh,
yeah. Oh, yeah. So I'm referring to him like he's a person, but
mhm.
he acts like a person. And as you're listening to songs, he will go into your history. He'll look at what you've played. He'll look at stuff you like. He'll look at stuff that you haven't played in a while. This past weekend, I was playing it because it's a great way to go through Spotify without having to dig around and try to find stuff. And he
Mhm.
came up on one. He's like, a couple of years ago, it was summertime and you were rocking out to these songs, but you haven't listened to any of them in a while. So this next set is going to be some stuff you used to listen to a lot, but haven't listened to so much lately. And if you don't like what he's playing, you can hit a button and it'll skip it and it won't put that in
Mhm.
your rotation anymore. Or you can favorite something that isn't already a favorite, but it'll keep going and it just continuously at every couple of songs, he jumps in and explains what the next
Wow.
set's going to be. And it's like, this is absolutely incredible. Like, it's
Yeah.
incredible, especially if you're a music lover and you have a lot of stuff in your history and I was
Yes.
with Spotify before it was officially in the United States. So I have a lot of history with Spotify. So of course, when they want to pull into my history, they're going to go back 7, 8 years. It's
Now, when they can
wonderful.
license Casey Kasem's voice for this AI bot, oh my
Oh,
goodness.
oh man, that would be lit. Welcome to America's Top 40. I'm Casey Kasem. That would be absolutely fantastic.
This is
This
Vincent from the US, and he writes, "Dear Casey."
I want to write a long distance dedication to my puppy.
You got it. Yep.
uh, that rant, by the way, if you guys haven't ever heard the Casey Kasem losing his mind and like it was a hot mic moment where
Oh, no.
he was recording America's Top 40.
Mhm.
It's wild. He
Oh,
loses
yeah.
his damn mind.
Was the engineer screwing up or something? He was
No,
having a bad
so
day?
he's doing America's Top 40, and they came out of an upbeat number, and the dedication was about a dog that died.
Oh.
And
So he's like, nobody did the research. He was upset?
he absolutely lost his mind. He's like, I really wish people would make me do a dedication to a
Oh,
goddamn dog that died after coming out of an upbeat number, like cursing up a storm, profanity,
wow.
like really just losing his freaking mind. And you're like, wow, that's kind of like, like a prima donna type thing. But then you think about it, it's like, yeah, you're coming out of that, because DJs, there's something in music called hitting the post. Anyone that's in music knows about hitting the post. When you're introing a song, you want to kind of talk until the last conceivable second right before the hook hit, right before the lyrics
Mhm.
hit. And
Right.
when you're done, you want to bring the song out. Well, how do you bring out an upbeat song with a dedication about a dog dying? Like mechanically as a DJ, that's got to be a nightmare. And
Mhm.
if you've ever done it, it sucks. So it's like I can only imagine what he must have been thinking, and he made it pretty clear. So
It
I
sounds
love.
like me between takes when I'm shooting a video, except the person I'm mad at is me. So
So let's talk about you because you have maintained your daily vlogs, which I give you a lot of credit for because you are in
oh,
my
yeah.
YouTube subscriptions every single day. No rain or shine, there's John doing his daily vlog.
Yeah.
Um,
Can't avoid him. There he is.
and when last we spoke, you were starting to ramp up Gen X Grown Up, trying to make it your primary source of income.
Yeah, right.
Just wondering how it's going. How is it going for you? It is the growth, what is the growth there? Is it what you'd hope for? Is it, are you optimistic, or is it something where you're like, I need to find something soon? Like, what's the assessment so far now that you're doing it full time?
Yeah, it's a great question, and one that, as you can imagine, I reevaluate about every week or so as I see how things are going, right?
You and me both, my
Um,
friend.
yeah, yeah. So for the benefit that anybody that doesn't follow me on my vlog every day, the dozen of you that do, I was laid off back in November of last year, and since I was already doing Gen X Grown Up, as you said, I really wanted to see. I'd always said, look, if I was brave, I would quit my job and really try to double down on this because I think I have the chops, I think I have the aptitude, but it's not going to happen as a hobby. Well,
Mhm.
I was too chicken to do that, but my job was not too chicken to fire me. So I said, I'll take. Look,
Jesus
there's the
Christ.
universe saying, here's your opportunity. You're going to go look for another job, or you're going to actually, get off the pot and do this. So
Mhm.
I did, and that's what you're referring to. And I think when we last spoke, really things were just ramping up. I was putting out stuff regularly. I was finding a groove that I can do, um, and not more so, equal to, can I grow large enough to sustain myself financially? That's fully a half of it. The other half of it is that thing I accomplished something I actually can sustain? Right. So maybe, yes, if I did 3 long form videos a day, I would grow. But can I do that for any amount of time? No.
You'd burn out in a
Well,
second.
there's been an adjustment of finding, okay, for the first few months, I put out something every single day, a short, a long, whatever, because I'm shotgun approaching it. And as I zeroed in on where an audience is and where I'm finding success, I dialed it back because I realized, well, once you can find a niche that's working for you, you can focus on that. Could I spend all day today working on a video that would create 5,000 views? Sure, I could. But what if I spent all week creating a video that will generate 50,000 views? Well,
Right.
that's much better,
That's a better use of
right?
your time, sure.
Yes, and so right. And so there's a greater potential there because now I've doubled my exposure just by picking what I do and focusing on that. So I've started putting out less stuff, usually 2 or 3 videos a week instead of
Mhm.
7 or 8 videos a week. I spent less time on shorts because while shorts get you exposure, it's not the kind of exposure that generates revenue. So I literally have to say to myself every day, is this thing I'm doing, is it something that will generate revenue of some kind? Or is there something else I would like to do and prefer to do that would generate more? And usually that's the decision. Not always, but I hate to be mercenary, but success means being stable. And if I
Sure.
can't do that, so over the last 8 months or so, I've more than doubled our subscribers. I've more than doubled the number of views that we've gotten. Our social followings are much larger. People have reached out to me from all walks of life. I had a guy contact me about a documentary. I had a guy contact me about a book he's writing. I've been guest hosted on several great podcasts, also yours. Gotcha. And teasing, of course. For those that can't see the knowing wink, I'm teasing. Um, and I've had a few videos just blow up that has started to get me where I need to be. Furthermore, I'm right on the precipice of some amazing opportunities that I have spent several months nurturing.
Mhm.
So realistically, my runway was a year. I said, I'm going to give myself a year, and that would be November 1st. November 1st would be literally just draining the bathtub right before you get in the bath. I mean, it's like, it's warm, it's perfect, the suds are right, and you drain it. But now it's finally time for me to hop in the tub because I've spent all this time nurturing relationships and with vendors. And, I've got this one vendor that I've been consulting with, and side gigs is another thing. I
Mhm.
thought I was just going to spend all my time doing videos, but I got a hosting gig that's paid. I got a consulting gig that's paid, all through exposure. And the more you get out there. So to wrap up the long answer of the short question that you asked me, it it is not growing as fast as I need it to for my initial runway. However, it
Mhm.
has grown enough to extend that runway.
Well, that's great.
So my 12 months is looking more like 18 months now. So I'm
Okay.
probably going to be, early to mid 2024 before I have to, pull the cord or not.
Mhm.
Um, and I don't look at that as a failure. It
No.
it is a failure of succeeding the thing I want to do. But worst case scenario, I have grown my hobby into a much larger side gig. if I have to go back to work and only do a video every couple of weeks, at least I have grown it to a point where that video every couple of weeks might be might not fall on deaf ears and hit 100 views. It's probably going to get a few thousand and I'll still have an audience. That's not what I want, but I'm not pessimistic. I'm not optimistic. I'm really pragmatic. And I know that what I'm doing is something a lot of people would like editing. What we just talked a second ago, Vincent, like anybody can do it. It's easy. Well,
Sure.
anybody can't. I recognize that, just like being successful here. There may be just something I don't have, right? Maybe it's a certain twinkle in my eye. Maybe it's a certain lilt when I speak. It's something that makes people just pop off the screen that I just don't have possibly, and I won't know until I find enough people tell me that I have it or I don't. I'm a growing, but if I had that, would I be growing at 5 times the speed, or I don't know. So you're just throwing darts at the board, waiting to see what sticks, where you're going to hit, and who's going to respond. And it's been positive. It has not been overwhelmingly positive, but encouragingly positive. So
encouragingly positive is a good thing. I mean, if you're extending your runway 6 months, that's a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
My runway, I fell off the end of the runway. The plane crashed, and now I'm looking for survivors.
Oh my goodness.
So I completely, I know, hey, look, it happens, and that's just life, right? And I get it, but
Yep.
I understand what you're going through. Like, I can totally relate. And the fact that you're able to extend it another 6 months, that's fantastic. I mean, look, things come in, sometimes the successes don't come in big lumps, they come in small chunks. And you know what?
You're right.
And 6 months is look, you had a 1-year runway, you didn't extend it 6 months, you extended it 50%. What else in your life have you ever done 50% better than you planned at?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So, what you're telling me right now is the reason, among the reasons that I vlog every single morning, every single weekday, at least when I get up, because it's a motivator, because otherwise I know me, I'm lazy. I'll sleep in, or I'll get to it later, that kind of thing. It makes me come in, turn on the lights, stand here and talk. That's step one. But the other is the reality check of people that either when I'm down, they tell me you shouldn't be, here's why. When I go off on a tangent or I get too excited, they're like, hey, remember to focus, right? It isn't a, oh, I want to be on video every day because look at me. It becomes therapy. I think I said it the other day in a vlog where I got, in the middle of it, I'm like, wow, until I stood here and said it to you being whoever, a couple hundred people that pay attention, I hadn't thought of it that way. And it was based on a comment that I got the day before. And it becomes this chorus of people that become my conscience, that become my Jiminy Cricket, that kind of help me, don't forget you're good enough. Don't forget you did well last week. We have confidence in you. And it's not just ego massaging. It's real good advice and real good input that I get in the comments of those. And it's invaluable. I would have quit, I expect, had I not started doing those vlogs, because I'd have been in my echo chamber of failure because things weren't going as good as they could be. But instead, I opened myself up, and many people have said, man, you're very raw and very honest, but you're not woe was me. But days that I'm having a bad day, I say I'm having a bad day. And I like to hope that my vision for those vlogs is when I stop doing them, or when I die, or when I'm so big I can't be bothered, or whatever the reason I stopped doing them, is that they'll be of use to someone that either got laid off work and decided to do something entrepreneurial. Because a lot of my vlog is about, well, I edited a video or I got an interview, but a large chunk of it is about the emotional journey that I've been on, from that rejection you get when you're laid off, to finding your worth, to deciding how to, and two, I think there's something in watching this arc, like I say many times in my vlog, I'll go, hey, thanks for tuning in. You could be seeing the next superstar in the making, or you could be watching a train wreck. We'll find out together by some point. This will have a finality. We will have an ending. It's not going to be Serial the podcast that didn't know how to wrap it up. This will somehow conclude, right? It hasn't been written yet, but it's going to end somehow. And everyone that goes along for the ride is going to see what's happening. And I enjoy sharing it. And I enjoy, it's how we met. You listen to the podcast, but it's what connected us to start talking IRL, right?
100%.
Before you were on the other end and we were talking and we were in your ears, but it was the thing. I like to hope that maybe you're like, oh, this is just a dude, because Some
No,
people
it's
listen
funny
to stuff and
because
they go, "Yeah."
your streams pop up in my calendar. So like there'd be days where Kathy and I are sitting on the couch and my Echo in the living room will show Jon GXG stream 10 a.m. tomorrow. And
Mhm.
she's like,
Yeah.
"Oh, that's right. Do you want to like push your plans back an hour so you can watch John?" Like it's just kind of like, part of the
Wow.
routine.
Mm.
When you there's we were, I was talking with my guest yesterday. Yesterday. Hold on, I can't confuse the audience here. My guest last week, but I recorded yesterday. No, yesterday I recorded Monday. Geez, I this is the problem when you're not working. By the way, you have no concept of days
How
anymore. They
how do days work again
Yeah,
exactly?
days
I'm
are just I
lost.
don't
It
know. I
it
woke
happens.
up
Yeah.
today. I ate lunch at 11 o'clock and dinner at 4. Like I have no idea what anything is anymore. But we were
Are you
talking.
70?
I,
Is that the early bird special you do out there?
literally, I'm getting senior discounts in my own apartment. But uh, we were talking about the parasocial relationship, and it's funny because that parasocial relationship does sometimes work two ways. When you're talking about the audience being your collective
Mhm.
conscience, not conscious, conscience. It's interesting to think of it because we were talking about, in one respect, it's weird when someone like him, because he has 4.5 million subscribers on YouTube. So when
Wow.
he goes to an event or when he's out, people recognize him. People come up to
Yep.
him. It's a whole. And he doesn't know them, but they all know him.
Right.
And kind of that weird flip side, because you've done so much to relate to your audience, you're kind of getting a bunch of people, like you have the Borg like reprogramming you every time you get off track, and it's kind of this,
Yeah.
like, wow, it's like a reverse parasocial relationship. You have a parasocial
Oh.
conscience.
Huh. Yeah. Yeah. You know
So.
what's funny is I had one of those moments at the Southern Fried Gaming Expo a couple of weekends ago. Well,
Mhm.
I had several of look, I've gone there for 6, 7 years in a row, and nobody ever stopped me in the hallway and went, "Hey, you're the guy from Gen X Grown Up, right?" Nobody cared. Nobody knew. I was at a booth that said Gen X Grown Up on it, and they didn't know who I was, right? So it didn't matter. Right. But
Awkward.
like, "Oh, are you watching the table till they get back?" "No, no, I'm the guy," right? So, but this year, because of all the growth that we've had, I was even
Mhm.
thinking going, not from a vanity standpoint of like, boy, I hope someone wants my autograph, but more of a, I wonder if I've seeped outside of the bubble I had enough that random people that I don't know might recognize me.
Right.
And I've had 4 or 5 of those at SFGE, but I want to share with you my favorite one. I
Sure.
wish I had caught this guy's name. I wish I knew to follow up and just tell him how he made my day. But I felt like I felt like a movie star because I was so these elevators in the Waverly in Atlanta are they're all interior elevators, but they're glass, so you can watch as you go up and you can see the big downstairs and the
Mhm.
big atrium that's all open. And you got to get in, and I was going like I don't know up to the 14th floor or something. It's really high, so we had a long ride. And I stepped in the elevator, and it was one gentleman and his wife just standing there. Just because I met them, I know that. And as I stepped in, I just kind of, as you always do, step in an elevator, go, hey, just kind of greetings. And he went, oh my God. And he had his phone out on selfie mode with his arm around my shoulder before he even said hello. He's like, you're John from the Gen X Grown Up channel. And he said, and I'm like, would you like to take a picture? Because you already did, kind of thing. I didn't mind, obviously,
Mhm. Obviously,
but
yeah.
and so I went from resting bitch face to hey, I'm on face for the picture, right? As I was just John in an elevator, and then I went to hey, that face, and and then for the rest of the elevator ride, he proceeded to tell me about, and he was telling his wife, this is the guy that I was telling you about. That I'm like, wait, you're talking at home about who I am?
Wow.
It's insane. It's like, no, no. Remember, you come in, I'm watching. Usually, when you're going to bed and I'm watching his videos, this is that guy, and I'm like, holy crap! Not only did you watch, I've watched a lot of YouTube videos. I'm not sure how
Mhm.
many of the people I would recognize walking around in the wild,
Right. No,
but
I'm.
he watched me enough to recognize me and to give a damn enough to want to take a picture with me. And that wasn't like flattering, that was validating is what that was.
Mm.
It wasn't like look at me how good I am. It's like look at the work I've done and what rewards it has started to reap. And I it made my day. I felt so good about just knowing that, and 2 or 3 more micro versions of that happened. Nobody assaulted me with a photo, but I had people, I'm talking to a guy over a booth and we're just chatting, and he's like, "By the way, I love your YouTube channel." I'm like, "Wow, thank you. Who are
Nice.
you? How do you," and you wanna go, "How do you know me?" But
Mhm.
you're putting your face on the internet every day. I know how they know me,
Someone's
but
gonna eventually recognize you.
yeah, it's just it's really, yeah, I don't know how else to say. It was validating, it was vindicating, it was great. I wish I could send him some flowers.
It must be nice to be able to track your progress from, I'm at the booth, if I died here, no one would know to call 911, to I get in the
Yep.
elevator and all of a sudden someone's fanboying over me. Like, that's gotta be like the most amazing thing in the world to just be able to go, yeah, even if I don't feel like things are moving along at the clip I'd like them to move along at, they
Yeah.
clearly are moving along. It's sometimes we assume that the speed that things are moving along at are is what's ruining things, but what you don't realize is forward is forward. I always say progress is progress. Even when I don't believe it, I always tell myself that progress is progress.
Yep.
Some months, and I'm going to tell you, this month is going to be one of those months. Like, paying the rent is going to be tough this month, right? But I know I'm going to be able to pay the rent. I don't know how. I haven't figured it
Hook
out
by
yet.
crook, right? You have
But
every previous one, you will find a way here.
right, and
Yeah.
I have paid every previous rent so far. And
Yeah, right? So far.
last month, I was like, "God, I don't know where this money's gonna come from." And I paid the rent. It's like, "Wait, I paid the rent." Like, I paid it, and I sat there and went, "Dude, you did it. See? You
Yep.
figured it out." Like, yeah, it's
Yeah.
struggling and some of the bills get a little bit, pushed to the side for now, but
Mhm.
the progress of being able to go, yes, when I didn't think I could do this and I'm doing it. And to feel like things are moving forward, hey, paid the rent. Progress is progress. I could at least I may make it to the end of my lease where I can just say, okay, look, I can't afford the rent here anymore. I'm
Mhm.
gonna have to leave. But at least I'm not gonna take a penalty for it, all the stupid stuff that you worry
Right.
about. And that's progress. Like, it's not the kind of progress I thought I'd be making after almost a year of being unemployed, but it's progress. And I'm
Yeah.
okay with whatever progress comes along because it's moving forward. And I think we underestimate the power of moving forward because the steps are small. So,
Well, that's the thing, and so I've learned so many things during this experiment, this journey, this entrepreneurial folly, whatever it is that I'm doing, and the number one tip that I will give anyone who wants to venture out on YouTube is there is not just one tip to be successful venturing out on YouTube. There is not a magic bullet.
mhm,
There's not a thing I can tell you. First, why would I tell you? Because I am not the success I want to be yet. So where do I get off? Right? It's your own
right,
journey to get
right,
there. But my number one tip for today that I have been feeling recently is when you are in it, when you're in the ditch and you are currently digging and you have a shovel full of dirt and you're sweaty and you're tired, what you can see is what's in front of you and what happened yesterday and what I'm trying to get to tomorrow. It's so easy to not stop and step back and look at your progress over the last week, month,
yeah, yeah,
year. I get in little ruts where I'm like, oh, the stats are going down. I hate my life. This is a failure. What am I doing? And then I switch the guide from, 30 days to 90 days and I go, look at this ramp up that I'm currently in the midst of, but in a dip of the ramp up.
right.
It's easy to feel, yeah, it's like you get in the shower and the water is hot. Well, when the water starts to get a little cold, you're like, damn, it's so cold. It's terrible. Well, no, it's just not as hot as it was. It's still much hotter than when you turned it on and it was cold. But
Right.
it's easy to forget that when you're in the midst of it. And I get in my head that way a lot. That's one of the corrections I have to keep making where I get in periods of, like you said, success comes in these chunks, not
Mhm.
necessarily even out. And you have weeks where things are on the downslide. But without the light without the dark there can be no light, or whatever the,
Yep,
the
yep, yep.
saying is, right? You need that to be able to measure the successes. It's all relative, and sometimes I just don't pull back. I don't zoom out far enough to see what I've accomplished, but when I do, I'm like, oh yeah, look where I was a month ago, 3 months ago.
Sure.
I think that applies not to content creators. I think that applies to, you know across the board, to anyone who's being creative like other people in your audience are. I mean, I know you mentioned when we sat down to talk that I'm not exactly your audience's cup of tea necessarily. I'm not that kind of creator, but
Mhm.
the human condition to want to make something for people to enjoy, I think has universal earmarks to it that are true no matter what that creative thing is.
Absolutely.
You know, you're woodworking or you're making jewelry or you're shooting video or you're
Mhm.
recording a podcast. The desire to want to make something, especially to make something that is received well and enjoyed. There are things that are true across the board, whatever that thing is that you love.
And one of the reasons I like having people like you on is that even though you don't fit the traditional definition of a maker, you do fit the
Mhm.
traditional definition of a creator and a content creator, and to some extent, an artist, because you're editing videos. The videos that you do is
Mhm.
an art form.
Right.
Editing the podcast is an art form.
Yeah.
It may
Making a
not be
thumbnail is an art form. You
it's
know,
a
is it,
100%.
yeah.
It's all one
Yeah,
big
what's
ball.
the what's the psychology of who's gonna click on what and
Exactly.
where's your eye go? You know,
And
things like that. I've learned so much.
people love to hear, because a lot of the people that do listen to this podcast are content creators. They're makers, they're artists, they're creative people, and whatever,
Sure.
but they're also content creators. And sometimes hearing from just another content creator, because getting outside, you talked a lot about getting outside of the bubble. We
Mhm.
as makers love to be in the bubble. We love our maker community. And that's one of the
Yeah.
things that, you'll hear every maker says they love the maker community. And rightfully so. It's a great place, great people. Everybody's awesome, right? But sometimes it's a really good idea to take a step a block north to where you don't live and
Yeah.
see
Yeah.
what goes on that street, because it's like, oh, that's working for him. Maybe that could work for me.
Yeah.
It's like the advice doesn't change. The advice doesn't change. It's what, the if you're on YouTube, you're on YouTube. You're not on YouTube as a maker. You're on YouTube. Period. Nobody cares what you
Mhm.
do.
Yeah.
You're on YouTube. How does another YouTuber do what they do? Maybe I can glean something off of their pain and suffering. Maybe
Yeah.
I can
You know,
learn
and
from
another
them.
facet of that same gym is that when you live inside of your bubble within your community where you all get along and you can commiserate and that kind of
Hmm.
thing, it's my experience that other creators doing what I'm doing, I know I don't, so I'll speak for myself and a couple other people. I don't have the capacity, I don't have the bandwidth to be a super fan of someone else's creation.
Mm,
I'm a super fan of my creations because I have to be. I live them and breathe them, right? So I get up at 9 o'clock in the morning, I shoot my vlog, I work for a couple hours, I go to lunch, I work for a few hours, and then I have dinner, and then I'm working all night. I'm in my studio and I'm clicking on comments, I'm going to social. I'm working a 16-hour day. It's not work, it's not hard labor, but I'm working at it.
right.
So I don't necessarily have the bandwidth to absolutely fall in love with and passionately follow someone else's passion
Mm,
because I can't serve mine if I'm busy doing that. So you've got to get outside the bubble to find the super fans that have a void where maybe they would like to create something, but they really don't have the time or the bandwidth or the aptitude. They will latch on and find someone and be a super fan of them. You won't find them if you just stay in your community where you're comfortable. You've got to go out and find those people that don't know who you are, that aren't also creators. That's why I am so staggered every time you and I talk, Vincent, because as a creative as you are, that you have the bandwidth to give a damn who I am is so absolutely flattering and staggering to me. Like, where do you find the energy to care enough about another creator? You do it all the time. That's what you do, is care about creators. But you see
yeah,
where I'm
it's
going with this, right?
but
It's
but but it's funny
often,
you say that, because that's exactly what it is, right? It's my job as a
yeah,
podcast host about
yeah,
creative people and the creative space and creative content creation. Yeah, that's what I meant to say. It sounds
sure.
silly, but it makes sense when you think about it.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
um, you know, it's my job to be engaged with a whole bunch of communities and paying attention and watching what's going on and like seeing what people are doing and going, okay, you've hit the moment now where I want to have you on, because now it's
Mhm.
like, now you have something that I think my audience might be interested in talking to you about,
Yeah.
and I think that the reason I can do that, and I'm lucky enough that that's my space. I always wondered, like I make something sometimes and it just kind of lands like a dead cat. And it's like, oh man, like I was really happy about that. I was really proud of that and didn't really. But when I make the podcast, I get a lot of feedback. It's like, okay, then that's my place, right? My place is to bring people on, introduce people to new people that they don't know, that they've never heard of, or somebody. I try to find, a good balance between the mega celebrities in the community and the smaller creators in the community to try to get a little bit of both. And I get a ton of guest pitches, and I turn a lot of them down. But there are a
Really?
couple
Yeah.
where it's like I had a couple in the last couple of years where it's like these were agent pitches, total agent pitches, and I'm like, yeah, we'll have them on, sure, why
Okay.
not?
Yeah.
Why not? And it's because they're doing something interesting. It's like, yeah, that'll work. But I can stay engaged. I have to stay engaged in the space, so to speak, so that I can have something interesting to bring to the table. Otherwise, every week, what the hell would I talk about? When I do a solo show, which I've started doing, which I always said I would never do, when I started doing solo shows to fill space when I couldn't get a guest, they're a half hour long, 40 minutes long.
Yeah. Those can
It's
get
like,
lonely. Yeah.
yeah, it's hard. It's hard to talk for 40 minutes by yourself. It's not a thing, but yet somehow, and this is kind of cool. We just crossed a milestone on this podcast. We just got our 100,000th download, which is like,
Fantastic.
I
Look at
I
that.
can't believe it. 100,000 downloads for an idea that I came up with on Monday, recorded episode 0 on Tuesday, and dropped episode 0 on a Wednesday. Like it was literally a 3-day creative process to come up with this podcast, and all these years later, it's 100,000 downloads. So
Well, that's the
it's
thing, Vincent. It wasn't a 3-day thing. It was how many years and decades of forming who you are to have a
true.
certain aptitude and a certain knowledge base. Yeah, you're an overnight success, but what about the 3,000 nights before that you weren't,
Right.
that you were working on getting to the point where you could do
It's
this?
true.
You
They
know?
always talk about it's like they always talk about Kobe Bryant and like LeBron James are good examples because you look at their success and how good they were on the court, and it's like, yeah, because they pretty much spent every minute that they weren't on the court on the court. They
Practicing.
were
Yeah, getting
always
better.
practicing. Yep.
Honing. Yeah, right.
So, but yeah, I always wonder in your situation,
Mhm.
now that you've had a good chunk of the data to look at,
Yeah.
how is the podcast growing in comparison to the YouTube channel? Because my impression as a
Mhm.
viewer, I don't want to say a super fan, but knowledgeable fan,
Sure.
um, that the podcast might actually be growing faster than the YouTube channel. Is that accurate or
Brr.
it's
Incorrect,
not?
Vincent.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
No. So it's really interesting. In fact, we did a poll on our of our patrons over at patreon.com where we have
Mhm.
supporters. The best people on the planet, by the way, are over there supporting us. Um, they were we wanted to know, hey, look, we spend X amount of time in different places. And something that I hadn't thought about in this way before is it's easy to measure success in volume,
Sure.
right? How many views, how many subscribers, how many downloads. Yeah. The other way to measure success is in what's the purpose of the content you're creating. By which I mean, most mercenary, I need to make money.
Mhm.
Pure and simple, I do. There was a time when I was like, oh, I'm just doing this. If you want to contribute, that's great, whatever. I don't feel like that anymore because literally I might have to stop, because I cannot keep up this pace if I also had a full-time job. So realistically, I need revenue. I need to be able to sustain. I got to pay the mortgage. I got to pay the power bill. I live in
Right.
Florida, 115 degrees. We got to run the air, right? But why are you creating the content? It's not to say I create content for money. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying I need to make money out of the content I create in order
Of
to do it.
course.
That's what I'm
Of
saying. You
course.
understand that cycle, right?
Mhm.
So all that is to say, the podcast, the audio component, the audio fork of our trident, which is the audio podcast, has stayed relatively flat, stable, not up, not
Interesting.
down, normal.
Okay.
But the podcast is where we relate most with our most ardent super fans. It generates the most devoted followers.
Mhm.
People love watching the YouTube videos. They
Sure.
watch it, they're done. The podcast every week, over and over, we hear people go, "Oh man, it's a Thursday ritual. I come back to it every week. I cannot wait. I feel like I'm sitting at the table with you guys." What we're generating there, while we're not growing monumentally, or frankly at all, I would say we're probably right now where we were when I got laid off 8 months ago. It's
Okay.
not grown dramatically. You couldn't tell the difference if I showed you two charts, right?
Okay. Fair enough.
But the number of ardent fans who say on a poll we did on Patreon, why are you a patron? Why do you contribute to us? Why do you pledge the support? And fully 60%, 70% said the podcast. The number 2 was, I'm mad you didn't have an option for everything. Okay, those are the super duper fans, right? I think the majority of people who know us well enough to want to support us
Mhm.
get that intimacy through a regular weekly podcast. So, though we're not growing numerically, it's generating a large chunk of our monthly revenue that has created that longer runway we talked about. So, have the numbers grown for the podcast? Not really. But what am I measuring? Do I need to be measuring what the podcast is generating for me? It's more, it's greater, it's better. So without getting larger, it's the place that we find our most ardent fans and the ones that want to support us the most. So that's not going anywhere anytime soon. Because we were debating, is it smart for me to spend, 6 hours a week working on the podcast? Is that smart? Is that intelligent? I don't want to end it, but if I can succeed without it, I would consider it.
Sure.
But what we actually found out was, don't measure the numbers, measure what that does for you. Why are you creating it? If you're creating it to reach an audience who loves what you are doing, we're doing that. It's just that the audience is small but rabid.
It's
And
the
that's,
passion. It's like a back channel to your passionate people, which
yeah, it
is
is. Yeah.
it's kind of cool that way. That's a really good way to look at it, because I'm sure there are people that, have YouTube channels that are big, that I've seen people with big YouTube channels drop their podcasts. And it's
Yeah,
like, I
sure.
think I always feel like that's a mistake. Like, even if you change the frequency of release,
Mhm.
whatever you do, I don't think not doing a podcast is a good idea if you were doing one. I don't think
Yeah.
canceling, because your super fans are going to follow you where you go.
Yeah.
I see it.
And
I see it with
interestingly, there's a Venn diagram of who listens to audio podcasts and who watches YouTube. And
Sure.
that overlap is not tremendous.
It's not
Many
100%.
many people only listen or only watch.
Yeah.
So you drop one or the other, you're dropping a portion of your audience that's not going to follow you to the other place necessarily,
Yep.
because it's an entirely different consumption experience, right? It's not the
They
same thing.
Well, it's the same reason that some people, listen to talk radio, but don't watch talk shows on, Fox News or
Hmm.
MSNBC,
Yep.
because that's how I consume that content. I like
Entirely different.
long, I like, it's really funny because I found you guys through the YouTube channel, but I've come, I still love the YouTube channel, but I find that I look forward more to the podcast than anything else, because for me,
Nice. Thank
consuming
you.
a podcast is, I don't want to say, I hate saying passive, but it is a passive thing where you're in my ears and I'm just doing stuff. I mean, most of the time on the Twitch stream, I have it on my Apple TV as
Of
I'm
course.
doing
Yeah.
something else, and I
What
have
else?
earbuds in, and I'm walking
Yep.
around the house just doing stuff,
Of
and
course.
I'm listening
Yep.
to you do the edit, because it's,
Hmm.
something you can consume that way. But
Yep.
I think it's kind of a mistake to not have that outlet, because people will consume you the way they're comfortable consuming you.
That's
Is it
right.
an 8-minute
Yep.
YouTube video or a 1 hour podcast? Some people prefer a 1 hour podcast. Hell, my YouTube channel is walking proof that some people prefer to listen to me talk to someone for 90 minutes than to do an
Hmm.
8 to 15-minute YouTube video. And that's
Yeah.
fine. Okay, so this is what I do. This is my
Here's
thing.
what you like.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, why don't we switch over, since we've been going an hour already, which is kind of crazy. And I know, John is
We're
very
fascinating
powerful, and
guys. There's no surprise there.
John is powerful and famous, and has another podcast that he's going to be hosting at 7 o'clock. So I don't want to keep him, but why don't we switch over and do some things of the week, because John always brings a good thing of the week along with him. So what do you got for me this time?
You want me to start? Okay.
Yeah. Oh
So,
yeah. Guest always
uh,
starts.
this is something that if you watch the YouTube channel, you have already seen. But I have not spoken about it the way I'm going to speak about it here. So this is a find that we made over Father's Day weekend. I don't buy a lot of tchotchkes and collectibles and stuff right now because my income is finite, and I have this fixed
Sure.
amount, but I also still don't walk away from amazing things. So I found a local toy store rather, here in town, And I walked around, and it was a great toy store. They had stuff. Some toy stores are like, here's our pop vinyls, here's our busts, here's our comic books. Good luck. This place was, here's stuff from the 60s through yesterday, stacked from floor to ceiling. Start digging. It was one of those kind of
I
toy
love
stores.
it.
I love those. I'll spend
Those
2
are the
hours in there.
best.
So after I did the lap, I came back, and under glass, they had this 1982 Tomy-Tronic Tron VFD handheld tabletop game.
So good.
This is so for your listeners. I just want to turn it on because just like we talked about music, I just want you to hear what it is that I helped me fall in love with this. Wait, there's more. Oh, the music, the delightful thing. So this ignited a passion for me to seek more of these things out. I missed out on so many of these. I knew about the Coleco, the Donkey Kong, the Pac-Man, the
The
things like
Coleco
that.
ones are the ones I feel like everyone knows. Yeah, they
Of
had Donkey
course,
Kong,
right?
Pac-Man, Frogger.
That's what I knew.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then I'm like, oh, a Tron. I've never seen a Tron. This is fascinating. And I picked it up. It's a great shape. It didn't have the box or anything, but it has the manual. And it's an amazing condition. I did a video on it. And after that video, people started saying, well, John, you got to seek this out. You got to seek this out. Well, my collection has started to grow as I find more and more of these because it's like a whole vein of gold that the 49ers didn't get to. I'm like, oh, I could go right to this. I missed it entirely. And it's like jumping back in time. I picked up one that's sealed. I picked up a couple in the box. It's amazing what they're able to do with, fixed screens that you can only show certain dots, but they combine. All right, well, you do this little dot and this dot, and it looks like a ship, and this dot and this dot, it looks like a meteor, and this dot and this dot. And I have just fallen in love with these things that I missed entirely in the 80s. And they're all from like 79, 80, 81, 82, 83, right in that little 5-year range when little John, me, would have absolutely died for them if he knew what was available. So this Tron one, though, is the first one that I got in my hands, sat down, and I thought, oh, I'll do a nostalgic review for it and that'll be fine. And what it ended up being was a nostalgic review of it and just like an absolute kind of like passion in me to go, well, I got to find the rest of these. I got to find more. I've got to, it's, you kind of think you're done. Like, you're like, well, I lived through it. I've seen all the stuff that there is. And then you find a whole category of stuff you missed. And you're like, oh, well, this is all fresh and new for me. So it's been very eye opening. And it's the tip of the iceberg of my new little 80s handheld collection.
That is absolutely fantastic. Actually, I want to ask you about something because seeing that Tron handheld actually reminds me of a YouTuber who I really, really enjoy. Have you ever seen Randy Rain on YouTube? She fixes
Not my
old
name.
she fixes old toy robots. It's kind of her thing.
Okay. All right.
Like particularly Tomy robots, because Tomy was the king of toy robots for pretty much the entire 60s, 70s, and 80s. They had the Tomy pinball, which was basically the robot mechanism applied to pinball. If you ever take that thing apart, good luck getting it back together. But she does all kinds of cool stuff. And one of the kinds of toys she does from time to time is those electromechanical arcade toys from the 70s and 80s.
Yes.
Where like she did the Tomy steering wheel game with you have the steering wheel and the car rolls on a
Love
reel.
it. Right.
She did that. She did the little stand-up one with the little tiny wheel. Was that?
Oh, this Blip. You're familiar with that one? The one that's
I have Blip in my closet. I bought one broken. I bought one broken to fix it. That's when I feel comfortable enough, that's going to be something that I fix. I have it in the box to fix.
So picking up a Blip is on my list. Have you taken it apart yet? It's fascinating.
No, because I saw Randy Rain take it apart and I'm like,
did you? Yes. So there's like a little red LED, but it's on an arm. And
it's on an arm.
It's a physical logic gate to determine, well, when you go this way, which slot can I go into?
Yes.
And it always goes through the center and then it picks one of 3 directions. You have 3 buttons. Blip that's on my list of this category of thing. She
just this past weekend, I believe it was. Like I said, I've lost all concept of days at this point, but she did a missile defense game. and it was the missile rides on
Mhm.
a clear piece of film, and as the game runs, it cranks and the film runs like a reel, like almost like 8 millimeter film up
Uh-huh.
to the top, and then there's a light, and she's like, well, how does the light, and then you run it and you see that it bumps a switch as it goes up there. It's like, oh, that's how it knows it's at the top of this. Wow, that's
Oh,
clever. And you start
that's
watching
smart.
these mechanisms, and if you're into these old like tabletop arcade games and handheld arcade games, the Tomy electromechanical stuff is just pure magic when you open it up. And I don't know how she understands this stuff as well as she does. Her videos are usually like a half hour to 40 minutes,
Mhm.
and I could sit there and watch. Like, she makes her own gears a lot of times. Like, she'll have one with a busted gear, and she'll just make a
Mhm.
new gear. She has
Cool.
molds to make gears, and sometimes she'll use a soldering iron to just take a cracked gear and just heat it up enough to kind of glue it back
Okay.
together so that it's
Oh,
functional.
yeah.
Like, all these crazy fixes for these old machines, plus just watching them come apart and watching her put them back together. It's a fascinating YouTube channel. I think you would totally love it because I know you've taken things
Mhm.
apart from time to time
Yeah.
in your life and put them back together. So, and if
Well,
you're into
and
this Tomy stuff, and the Tomy stuff in particular, it's what she specializes in. So,
okay, yeah. That electromechanical, those toys are so emblematic of
hmm
the Gen X experience because
hmm
we straddled the analog and digital.
yes,
And these
yes,
toys are literally like my mom was analog and my dad was digital, and here's the baby, right?
yep,
It is that middle, it's sitting on that line where it's like, well, here's how we made toys. Oh, we have
hmm
some electronics now. How can we tweak the toys? But it's before they went all electronic,
yep.
right?
It's
So it's
mechanical
that
toys with electronic logic. It's wild to see
it
how
is.
they
It's
hacked them
mhm,
together, basically.
that's right. Yeah. It's
Yeah, no, that's
decidedly Gen X.
I love that. I love that stuff. Like,
Mhm.
those toys, because there was a very visceral experience of playing them, like the little tabletop turbo racing game where you had the tiny little gray steering wheel on it. Like,
Yes.
I
Mhm.
remember playing that obsessively as a kid. And there's something about when you turn the machine on and the reel starts spinning and you can feel the damn thing vibrating because there's actually
Yep.
a
Little hum.
flywheel inside turning everything. And
Sure.
there's just nothing like that now. It's like, okay, I love my phone and I love playing Pokemon Go more than a normal human being probably should. But at the same time, it's a game where, there's nothing tangible in those games. And in that case, the tangible thing was, oh, yeah, the damn thing shakes, vibrates, and dances all over the table if you don't put your hands down on it. But
Yep.
awesome. Um, my thing of the week is actually a thing that Kathy and I did, and I'm not sure if I mentioned it here or while we were talking before we started.
Alright.
I don't remember, but it was the Long Island Retro Gaming Expo. I
Okay.
have been
Yeah.
for years wanting to go to this, and I find out it happened in hindsight every year. This
Oh.
year, by some miracle, I was watching John Riggs, and he said August 13th he was going to be at New York at Long Island Retro Gaming Expo, and I'm like, oh God, I found out before it's gonna I'll make it. So I looked at Kathy, I'm like, you want to go to this? She goes, yeah. I'm like, all right. So we went this weekend and it was an absolute hoot. They
Oh,
take over the entire Cradle of Aviation Museum in Garden City, New York,
okay.
or Uniondale, depending on whether you want to be fancy or real. And it's just every game you've ever wanted to play. Just there's like a whole floor of arcade games. There's rooms with different kinds of games. And then this year they had a Tetris exhibit, and it was literally
Cool.
you could play every version of Tetris, and there was an explanation on a banner next to each one of what it was, when it came out, and its place in Tetris history.
Wonderful.
And
That's great.
we didn't even know that was there. And as we were kind of like, I think we're done. And she looked at the floor plan and she's like, no, we got to go upstairs. I'm like, what's upstairs? She goes, the history of Tetris. She goes, there's no
Mm.
way in hell we're going to do this whole thing, and I'm not going to go see the history of Tetris. I'm like, let's go. So we went up to the third floor, and it was so cool to see how Tetris evolved from an ASCII based game all the way
Right.
through to the crazy variations of Tetris that are out now. But it's a great festival. There's a lot of vendors. I wish there were more. That was something Kathy said she wished there were more of also, because it was the coolest thing looking at what people were selling. There was a lot of memorabilia for sale. There was a
Mhm.
ton of game cartridges for sale. A ton. Like, I've never seen so many game cartridges and systems. Like, you could buy bundles of systems at almost every table in the vendor area. It was awesome.
Wow.
And then if you go into the second room, which was in the back toward the back of the place a little bit, the vendors back there all had like old computers, like full on old computers for like $200, like computers that were, the kind that you would build an emulation PC out of. And this one guy's like monitor, it was a big ass Dell, it was a Sony Trinitron, but Dell branded monitor,
Oh, like two
$25.
Trinitron.
Yeah. $25. It's like, take it, $25. And I'm like, oh, like if I had room for that thing, like it would be coming home with me, because that thing was 17 inches too. Probably weighed about 150 pounds, knowing those monitors. But it was great. It was a great experience just walking around. All the arcade games that they have at the show are free to play too. So you can, I sat there playing Popeye for way too long. Like I played a lot of Popeye. So awesome experience.
Popeye. How many did you save Olive? Did you save Olive?
No, I didn't realize how terrible I was at the game. I mean, what's really funny is that, what it is? I was playing it on the cocktail version, and on the cocktail version, I hate cocktail arcade machines to begin with, because I don't like leaning over the machine and kind of reaching in front for the controls. And it's really awkward to play that game where you have to move in 4 directions with the stick basically pointing at your stomach.
Right. Yeah.
But it was fun to play. It was like, oh wow, this is the arcade version. It's pretty much, I didn't realize how good the Nintendo conversion of that game actually was until I replayed the arcade version this past weekend. But I played that. There were so many games, like so many games. There were so many people. And one of the things that I love, and you'll appreciate this because of what you do, one of the things I loved is seeing young kids playing these games, like young,
That's
like
right.
7 or 8 years old, like playing
They have little
Donkey
footstools so the short kids can stand there.
Absolutely. And it's
That's
like,
awesome.
oh, I love seeing kids playing stuff from when we were kids. It makes
me too.
Right here every time.
I get it. Yeah.
Every time. So Long Island Retro Gaming Expo, it's usually, apparently it's somewhere around the middle of August every year. Now that I know that, I won't miss it next year. Kathy and I are already like, yep, we're going back next year, and we're going to spend a lot more time there next year. It was the same thing. We did Brickfest we did Brickfest back in May, which is a Lego con, and it's very good. But we did it all.
Here's an aside that you might not know about me that you just sparked. You talked about Brickfest. I've been to Brickfest several times because from 2001 to about 2009, right about, I ran the largest fan-run Lego forum on the internet, all based around the Bionicle series. Do you know that?
Oh, wow. I do remember the Bionicles.
Do you know Bionicle?
Yeah.
Holy so crap. The site is still around, but I founded it. I had 2 other guys as partners. We ran it for many years, and as my interests diverged, I just kind of offloaded it. So the site's still there. He's still running it. It's called bzpower.com because it started as Bionicle Zone and Kanohi Power, which were the name of the masks, and we merged it into bzpower.com. And it's still one of the longest running fan-driven forums about Legos. And for a while, we were even funded. Our hosting was paid for by Lego for our dedicated host during the heyday when Bionicle was huge. But awesome. I know Brickfest well. And it's that kind of like super focused nerdery that I absolutely buy into,
Oh yeah, 100%. And I'm going to say that I've said this many times, especially on this show where she was actually a guest, but I am the luckiest guy in the world because my fiance is into all the nerdy shit that I'm into. So like if I want to go to like Brickfest, I don't have to go, can I go to Brickfest? Oh, more of that garbage or, or do I want to go to Retro Gaming Expo? It's more like, okay, cool. What day are we going? It's like, yes, you are going to be the wife that every nerd dies for, the one that wants to do all the nerdy shit that no other wife wants to do. Thank you, Jesus.
I can relate. I met my wife in a Star Trek fan club when I was in college, and she and I, for years, were the captain and first officer of said fan club.
That is
putting
fantastic.
on Star Trek uniforms and Klingon heads before it was called cosplay. They called it dressing up.
That is fantastic. That is
Yeah, you
absolutely
gotta find
fantastic.
that similar soul. That's the secret sauce.
When I met her and we were talking, we were getting to know each other at the beginning, and by the way, today is August 16th. It is our 6-month anniversary, of
Congratulations.
dating. And it
Yeah,
is we're close to 3 months, no, 2 months of being engaged. Um, she is, she goes like in October, she's going on the New Kids on the Block cruise. Like
yeah,
she has all those like niche nerdy interests, just like
good,
tonight. In fact, tonight she does her streaming radio show.
okay,
And I've done, weekend shows on her radio channel now that I'm friends with her and I'm friends with her friends and, I'm doing the stuff on her channel
sure,
now. So
right, totally.
it's when you meet a kindred spirit, you hold on to that kindred spirit. And there was something
Mhm.
about her that was like, yeah, it's like if I met her if I was a Star Trek person and I met her at a Star Trek convention, oh, it would be like three
Right.
days before she had a ring. Like it would be like, no, 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 no.
Well,
We
you could just it ticks so many boxes that you don't have to do it. Like, look, if you're here
exactly.
and I'm here, I already know all the things. A lot of the first date questions are out of the way because you don't
Yeah.
have to kind of dance around and go, "So, how do you feel about science fiction?" Right? She's got pointy ears on already. We know how she feels about science fiction. You don't have to dance around that. It's a
The-
given, and then you can move on from there to build a relationship.
she reminded me after we got engaged, she reminded me that on a very early date, it might have even been our first date, I was talking about professional wrestling, which is a very divisive topic. I mean, unless you're George. But we were talking about professional wrestling, and I said something to the effect of, "Oh, if you watch professional wrestling with me, I'm putting a ring on it." And she watches Raw and SmackDown with me religiously. Like if it's on, she actually, if we have people, if like particularly this happens at her house a lot. Like we'll be at her house, and her cousin will have company over, and it'll be like, all right, let's go. SmackDown's coming on. Like, and she'll like, let's make, kind of like, let's make our graceful exit. Let's go watch SmackDown. It's like, oh, this woman. Like I have hit the jackpot. I am a lucky,
Right.
lucky boy.
Right.
So
The alternative is someone rolling their eyes because you want to leave to go watch SmackDown, right?
exactly.
Instead, she's the one saying, "Let's go." Yep.
It's a reminder, like, and like even she even knows when the pay-per-views are. So like she
Wow.
won't schedule weekend stuff on a weekend when there's a pay-per-view because so that we can
Great.
stay home and watch it together. Like
Nice.
I swear I have the perfect relationship. I could not ask for more.
There you go.
But this
That's a
isn't a show.
partner.
This is it. True, she truly is. But this isn't a show about promoting Kathy. I already had a show promoting Kathy back a couple of months ago, and you guys got to meet her. So actually, if you're coming to Maker Camp, you're going to get to meet her there too. But
Mm,
you know who does deserve a pat on the back and doesn't get enough love though? The people who support this show financially. And
there you
those
go.
people include Best Man Al Schultz from New York Woodworks, Scott Oram from Dad It Yourself DIY, Ed Swanson of Ed's Clocks and More, Nick Birchtold of Birchtold Design Build, Tori Decker of Tori Did It, Jake Drews of Make with Jake, Meg and Chris from Onyx Designs Woodwork, Christian Erie from Warren Works, Ken Madden of Mad K Studios, David Wood of DW Wood Builds, Dean Duplantis, Chris Raley of Route 9 Signs, Jeff Stein, aka A Weird Guy, Kim and Garrett from Kim and Garrett Make It, Rory Langefeld of RLO Woodworks and DIY, Robert J. Keller, Brian Arsenault, the Seven Hills Maker, Dave Bauer of Dave Bauer Art, Donald LeBlanc of Fun with Woodworking, Ross Cave, Jeremy Spees, Grant Alexander of the Clamp Podcast, Brad Harrison of Brad's Customs, and Billy Polton of Polton Projects. Thank you so much to everyone who supports this show financially. I could not do it without you. There's a lot of things right now that I couldn't do without that financial support. So it's all
Mhm.
tremendously appreciate it. If you can't support the show financially, hey, I understand. Believe me, of all the things I understand in the world, that's something I understand deeply and profoundly.
Right.
But if you
Yep.
can support the show in other ways by sharing it, leaving a review, watching the YouTube version, help keep my YouTube hours up so maybe I can monetize my channel a little bit, that would be a huge help too, because hey, it's another way for people to support the show. And you're watching and listening anyway. So you might as well do it over there where I could get some more credit for it. But
Why not?
thank you for everything you do. It is tremendously appreciated because when you guys support the show and you give me that legitimacy, then I could go to a guy like Jon Reddick and go, hey, you want to come on my show? And he's like, no, your show
Who are
isn't.
you?
Oh, wait, no, no. Oh, yeah, this is a legit show. Yeah, let's
That
do it.
show. Oh, well, now let's clear my schedule. That's
But
right.
It's so funny because I wanted to have you on to talk retro stuff, and we ended up talking so much about the other side of what you do, more about the business end of what you do, and I think that was it was super informative, and I really enjoyed chatting with you about that stuff. I didn't expect the conversation to go there, but I really actually really enjoyed it tremendously. So, thank you for being so open about everything. And one of the things I appreciate about what you've been doing in the last 8 months is how open you've been with what you're going through and the struggles you're having and the successes you're having too. It's not all struggles. Some of it's been successes.
Certainly.
Some of it's been
Certainly.
some of
Yeah.
it's been like, all right, this is cool. This is happening.
Certainly.
And I'm really enjoying being along on the ride with you. And I appreciate that you're taking so many of us along with you, because it's informative for people who are about to take that leap to go, okay, yeah, it's not all wine and roses, but you know what? It's still on balance, not too bad.
I would agree. Yeah, I appreciate
So
you going along for the ride with me, and I mean, your supportiveness and your enthusiasm, is that kind of thing. It just helps so much. We're talking about that support system and who is in the bubble. You got to keep people in the bubble that keep your spirits up, and you're one of those. So it's much
I
appreciated.
appreciate
And
it.
nice
I
to have you
appreciate it.
here.
I do it. I honestly, I do it because I love you guys. I love all three of you. I think you guys do. As far as the space you're in, and the retro and nostalgia
Hmm.
community, literally nobody does it better. And I will put you up against anyone that's doing what you do. I like a lot of channels that do what you do, but I don't like any as much as I like you guys. And I really,
Oh,
truly
bless your
mean that.
heart, Vincent. Thank you so
So,
much. That's
um,
so kind.
for those of the people listening who didn't ask that you come back, who may not know where to find you, where can people find Gen X Grown Up in the internet universe?
Yeah. So before I plug what I'm doing, I'm going to circle back real quick to your list of patrons. And whenever I'm guested on a show and I hear about the amazing supporters that you have, and if you're the kind of person that isn't like, hey, support me, hey, support me, hey, support me, I just want to remind your listeners, that people that listen that are not supporters, that you're under no obligation to support. But if you choose to support Digitally Creative and Vincent and the work that he does, you're supporting an upright, quality production with a genuine, warm human being who deserves your support. This doesn't happen easily. It doesn't happen for free. It doesn't happen automatically. It takes work. And Vincent could be doing anything to better his position in life. We talked about, the struggles and stuff. But among those things he does, he chooses to do this to deliver content and entertainment. So if you thought about it, pull the trigger. Maybe go support his show. It's worthy of your support. So
Thank you, man. I'm gonna
with
isolate that. I'm gonna
with
isolate that. I
that in mind,
appreciate that.
let me plug myself and the crap I'm doing. Yes. So Gen X Grown Up, all one word, you can find anywhere you find things. Just search for it, just like I said. It's GenXGrownup, all one word, no spaces. We're on all the social media networks. We're on Twitch. We're on YouTube. We're on podcast affiliates and stuff. All of our content is available. You can find it all on our website at genxgrownup.com. Beyond that, you can also hear me on 1980s Now, another fantastic podcast that I co-host with Will and Kat, that is a different kind of 80s podcast that talks about how pop culture of the 80s is still relevant today. Entirely different type of show. Plus, I'm also the host of Celebrating Yesteryear over on Retro Days YouTube channel, a spectacular production they're doing over there that I'm literally just a talking monkey. I don't write it. I don't edit it. They just said, there's no one we would want more to talk and read our script and to be the presenter. And so they asked me on board there. It's another place you can find me. And of course, you can find me apparently every 6 months here on Digitally Creative with Vincent Ferrari, because I keep coming back because it's such a pleasure to be here. And you are just such a warm, kind human being to spend
Oh.
some time with. So again, thank you for inviting me back. And for the 1.5 of you that asked, he did exactly what you wanted. He had me back. So.
Now if we're going to get John back in a few months, I'm going to need you guys to create the letter writing campaign all over again, because I mean, if I don't get the feedback, how do I know that's what you actually want?
There
I
you
don't
go.
know.
Exactly right. There you go.
But yeah, absolutely, John. It's an absolute pleasure. I can't, like I said, I love the fact that we have gone from, me watching you on YouTube to us being friends. And that means a lot to me. It's, it's,
Hell yeah.
it's really cool. And watching your continued success it warms the cockles of my heart, because I remember I go way back with you guys, and seeing where you've come from and to where you are now and to where you're going. I'm very excited for you, and for Mo, and for George also, because
Yep.
everybody's doing cool stuff. And I really hope George brings back turnbuckles and territories. We can. I'm waiting for season 2, George. I'm waiting for season 2. It was my favorite wrestling podcast, and now it's gone, and you took it away from me.
Well,
Seasons.
it was a season 1. We'll see how it goes. He has a lot of irons in the fire, and unlike me, George has a full-time job as well that
How
he's trying
dare
to
he?
slot these things. I know, really inconsiderate.
That's rude. He's going to support your family and all that stupidity. I can't believe it.
Where do you get off?
I know. How dare you? And then my best Greta Thunberg voice. How dare you? On that crazy note, I will be back again next week. I have a guest lined up. I'm hoping that I will hear from that guest to confirm, but I should have a guest lined up for next week. If not, it's going to be solo time, and I know how much you guys love those, but I guess we'll throw it in the pot and see what cooks out. So I will see you guys then.
All the time.
Exactly. 40 minutes of me whining about not having a job. Are you ready?
And go.
Until then, have a great week, everybody, and I will see you in some form then.